start. Hello, everyone, and welcome to NOVIPRO's webinar about the fascinating world of AI. The technology has been booming for quite a while, and NOVIPRO, keen on innovation, wanted to create a conversation around it. Before we start with the webinar, I'd like to mention two things. The first one is that you have a Q&A functionality that is at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to ask them in this section and we'll answer them at the end of our webinar with the Q&A session. Secondly, if you have any technical problem, feel free to join me in the chat. My name will be NOVIPRO brackets Victoria. The ball is yours, Pierre.
Thank you, Victoria. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to this webinar on AI and its impact in various industries. My name is Pierre Tocci, Senior Consultant Transformation Strategy at NOVIPRO, and I will be your host of today. Now, the idea for this webinar came to us during the development of our 8th annual IT trend study. That is a Canadian study that states the trends and the state of IT amongst Canadian companies. That study was released last week. And again, it's our 8th annual. In this year's key findings, we've seen an impressive jump in AI investments intents. So we've gone from 13% in 2023 to 40% in 24. That's an increase of 27% in 1 year. And this is exactly why we are talking about AI today. Now, to support these key findings, always via innovation, NOVIPRO has decided to host a panel discussion with 4 of my friends here today, all of whom have worked in different innovative business-driven projects with NOVIPRO. So, for the next half hour or so, I will be discussing with Chris Mastanak, who's a Senior Solution Engineer specialized in AI and machine learning at Splunk, Michael Belanger, Advisory SME, that is a subject matter expert on AI and business automation at IBM, Shudam Shaduri, Modern Workplace and Security Channel Director at Microsoft, and finally, Sandy Anand, which is a Senior Director, Decision Analytics and Science. He's also heading the AI and machine learning efforts at Infor. So, to begin this webinar, which will be divided into 4 sections. So basically, I will ask for questions to my guests, getting started and choosing the right AI solution. Then we'll talk about considering a corporate IT strategy, integrating AI into your business, and finally, how do we remain competitive with AI? So let's get this starting. I will ask my 4 guests, each of them, their role, their approach to AI, and what are the key considerations a prospects should have. And I will start with Chris Mastanak at Splunk. Chris, why?
So I help our customers implement AI and ML with their Splunk data. So if you're considering AI and ML with Splunk, it's because Splunk is already a fantastic tool for ingesting machine data and also as an IT automation platform. With that in mind, the considerations around data science, AI, and machine learning is really around the fact that Splunk makes some of the harder problems that data scientists have always been fairly poor at, getting data in, building data pipelines, and also operationalizing insights that Splunk makes very easy for our customers to work with on a day-to-day basis for cybersecurity and IT use cases.
Thank you, Chris. Now let's turn this to Michael Belanger at IBM.
Yes, thank you. So my role is to help customers just unlock the power of AI within their enterprise. So that means the technology per se, but AI is also much larger than just technology when we're talking about integrating it in the enterprise. So things to consider would be like gain in efficiency that you can make with the technology to fill certain skills gap and replace non-value added tasks. So I know there's some people that likes to play with AI, but when we talk within an enterprise context, it has to be framed properly. And I think the key consideration is with the human aspect. So everything about change management, the adoption of the organizational structure, different business aspects like the different use cases, and the value add that can have on the financial bottom line as well. And I think in order to get that productivity aspect and that adoption, you also have to have a governance aspect. So not only like the quality of what you're getting, but also everything feasibility, risk, and regulations that come into play as well. And this is pretty much the approach of IBM. So having all those three pillars. So I know that Chris has talked about data. So having good data, having the technology to support doing AI, but also having a platform that also include the governance aspect of all the risk and regulations that can come into play as well.
Thank you, Michael. Well, let's continue with Shudam at Microsoft.
Yeah, no, super excited for being here at this NOVIPRO session. I think as Michael and Chris covered, I think the key is it all starts with data, which is what kind of data you are able to access with respect to your customers as well as internal data. Then the second step is really assessing what your goals are with respect to integrating AI or transforming your business processes or business model using AI. And then finally, starting with implementing certain pilots and also taking care of governance. So at Microsoft, I'm responsible for the channel ecosystem across Americas, that is US, Canada, and Latin America. And one of the key things we try to make sure when it comes to AI, it's a combination of responsible AI, meaningful innovation, and then finally making sure it's valuable to our customers. So with the help of partners like Splunk, on the data side, or IBM on implementing these solutions, or Infor with their innovative offerings, Microsoft believes in providing that platform, whether it's with Azure AI or Copilot, which helps increase the application efficiency or infusing AI or just increasing the productivity of employees. So three things again: responsible AI, meaningful innovation, and empowering people to achieve more.
Thank you, Shudam. Sandeep, turning the ball to you as you're an application provider at Infor. Tell me more about Infor and AI and yourself.
Yeah, and thank you for the question, Pierre. And so I lead the AI/ML solution portfolio at Infor. And so part of what Infor specializes in is this industry-centric focus towards building cloud applications. And so when we are working with AI, we like to think of how do we personalize that to the nth degree, right? And so when I think of the considerations, they tend to be people, process, and technology, right? So people is, you look at it from a management perspective. Are you ready for that adoption? What is your culture and how you want to push it? Are you looking at it from a challenge? Or are you looking at it from innovation, right? And then from the foots on the ground or hands on the keyboard, you know, what type of workforce do you have and how are you ready to adopt it, right? So from a people perspective, which is always a big challenge, is how are you making sure you're bringing that organization to the next level? From a process perspective, you know, we preach highly agile, increased velocity, value-driven approach. But generally, you're going to look at it from a maturity curve, right? Are you looking at a 1-year plan, 3-month plan, 5-year plan? That kind of drives it, right? So that process and how it's integrated to your culture is important. And then technology, right? So we talk about, you know, which clouds and which AI models, and hopefully we're not going to go into all the details of the AI models, but how are you using it from a business value? So, you know, I think we talked about productivity improvement and manufacturing, how you're leveraging sensor data and, you know, your data strategy, as someone mentioned, your data governance strategy and your security strategy. How does that technological architecture come into play to drive that, right? And so we look at all three of them, and everyone has a personal experience based on those three factors.
Those are all excellent points, guys. And while I'm listening to you, something came across my mind, which was not supposed to be discussing today, but I see a huge level of comfort with governance here. So let's get into that. Amongst the 8th edition, we've seen numbers such as 38% of our surveyed companies see cost as a showstopper for AI. Now we are talking adoption, governance. I know that cost should not be a showstopper, but how do each of you swing that showstopper into an opportunity? Let's begin with Sandeep, since you had the last word.
It's a very important question. So, I mean, cost is always a big driver from a business perspective. But if you think of what cost is, right, there is the total cost of investment of architecture and models and solutions, but there's also an opportunity cost, right? So we see in manufacturing, what is the opportunity cost of not being able to leverage your information to build better products? What's the opportunity cost of being able to understand security in a way that allows you to identify your bottlenecks and your risks and how to mitigate them and how to manage kind of a very complex environment, right? So I like to think of the value conversation versus the cost conversation when engaging that discussion, because it is about cost, but then the balancing act is value now, next, later, cost now, next, later, and where's that right balance? And I think it's always a tough conversation, but drive it by value, and I think you always come to the right answer.
Yeah, I hear you, because I fear that cost is not the negative factor. It's the cost of not doing it that is the negative factor.
That is right, yes.
Okay. Shudan, up to you. How do we turn this around?
No, I think I completely echo with Sandeep here on the opportunity cost. As Pierre, you highlighted, it's sometimes the cost of inaction is more than the action. And I love that because if you look at just the cost aspect, you are missing out on that whole innovation story and transformation story. We have seen time and time again, S&P 500 has a duration of like since 1900, the duration of a company existing in S&P 500 has dropped from 38 years to less than 10 years now. So every 10 years, company is being replaced from S&P 500. And I think a lot of that can be tied to how innovative they are in this era of technology-led transformation, because we can think of first industrial revolution to where we are today. AI has really enabled things which earlier were not possible. So I don't think that day is far away when we might see one or two people companies becoming a unicorn and having $1 billion plus valuation. And that all is possible from AI. I'll give an example of a friend of mine who is the CTO of one of the fastest growing pharmaceutical company. And he mentioned to me that with the launch of GitHub Copilot, the amount of developer productivity which gets enhanced can allow him to invest more with respect to the business areas versus hiring more people. So how do you empower your people, whether it's your developer or your business decision makers or your analysts, to do more with less? That's something which AI is enabling. I'll take another example of Cineplex, which operates more than 3,000 movie theaters. They have reduced their time to process ticket refunds from 15 minutes to 1 minute, and all of this using AI in an automated fashion. So we see time and time again, the opportunity cost here is massive, though at the same time, I think we have opportunity to start with small pilots, make sure that the governance aspect and adoption aspect is taken care of as well, while also thinking of how can you transform your complete business model using AI. So think of it as an enabler than a cost function. And I think that's where the opportunity lies, really changing that mindset. So I completely echo with Sandeep here.
Sure. Michael, I'll throw this at you. Obviously, because you're in the field of automation with IBM, right? If a competitor came next door to Shadim's customers at Infor and started building a plant, I'm sure they would not build it the same way as the guy next to Sandeep with this plant did it 20 years ago. They would do it completely differently, right? So how what would you say to people that cost is in a negative as opposed to a motivator?
Yeah, so I think I still resonate with what was said previously. So in terms of cost, I think it's important to look, like I said, when you're in the enterprise context, that you look at the cost in a way that you're doing it for a specific reason with real impact on either productivity, efficiency, and finally, it's all tied together with the bottom line as well. So cost is only one part of a bigger picture, and you have to look way beyond that to see what are the real not fallback, but the real positive impact that it can have on your business. So whenever I hear about cost, the first thing I say is we don't necessarily value this technology by cost, but more with the impact it can have on evolving your business processes.
Chris, I began a journey with Splunk many, many years ago when it was just log analysis and getting logs and doing graphs with this. So when people tell you about cost as a showstopper, how do you see this at Splunk now?
I'll say that I 100% agree. The costs probably aren't even high enough. Whatever estimate you have, it's probably going to be even higher because you're going to be spending probably 4 to 5 times more on people and processes. And you're really only going to be spending a 20% of that cost on the actual technology. And I say this as someone who's run 8-figure data science programs in the past. And with that in mind, these programs can have, when you're doing truly innovative machine learning and you've built a program around that, those programs can have 90 to 95% failure rates across every single data science experiment you run. So not only are the costs going to be higher, the failure rate will be higher as well, but that's not a reason not to do it. We've seen to Shubham's point before, for the last 100 years, human capital inflation has only accelerated. And we've seen this trend through COVID as well, that it's become more expensive and more costly to add individuals to throw bodies at problems, and that's simply not a sustainable process going forward. So this is something that you need to invest in, and you can't understand the cost being a steady state. You can see that AI is only going to get cheaper going forward. You can see that costs might drop 10, 100 times, as we've seen from ChatGPT's pricing. And from that, if costs are dropping, number one, but also not being able to throw bodies at problems anymore is also going to be a problem in the future. The IRR that you're looking at in 3 to 5 years' time is probably a different picture than what you're seeing now.
What makes up a cost quite often is all about, people associate risk or cost to risk to cost, which should not, right? And I hear a lot about people when they evaluate a new technology or AI, their risk factor is their people. I don't have the skill sets. I don't have the people. I won't be able to control this. It's going to be too expensive. Therefore, I'm going to fail, right? That's what people think generally, unless you had a first try at this and found out that it's appealing. So based on this, Sandine, your customers, when they're considering AI, when we look at people and skill set, how do you comfort them, should I say?
It's a very good question. And when Infor talks about AI, we are talking about it from the concept of augmented intelligence. So artificial intelligence has a connotation of a black box. Our solutions are set up to be people friendly. What that means is that our solutions have embedded science expertise along with it. Because to your point, there's the concept of, I don't want to invest in these very large data science organizations, like some customers which certainly should, some don't, right? So we kind of provide solutions, we kind of provide people, process, technology, Pierre, as part of a solution, right? So of course, we underlying framework around security and compliance and making sure you have the right access rights. But then also the support of the solutions involves the scientist. So we bring that along so that you don't have to worry about those other factors. So that's really what Infor does when it talks about augmented intelligence, our AI strategy.
Let's continue on this with Michael. How about automation to reassure people that they're not going to fail and they don't need data scientists?
Yeah, I think a little bit like Sandeep said, I think the tool, at least for IBM, is the philosophy is bring the tool to the user and not the user to the tool.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really how it's built. And there's a lot also of so yes, we're providing software, we're providing solutions, but there's also a big thing that IBM does, which is education. So we're educating people not only on the software part, but also on the topic in general. So on AI and automation. So that really allows customer to be in charge of what they're trying to build, rather than just the old methodology of more of a waterfall thing, where you just dump things and you
Mm-hmm.
say, yeah, just do this for me, and then it's more iterative, it's more agile, and there's also that education part that we're implementing in all of our software offering as well.
So let's assume a company dives in and they can use their own skill sets, reinvent their people to do this. How about compliance and security, Shubham? Because we still need to secure the data.
No, I think that's one of the, apart from cost, what we have seen up here is security is the bigger concern apart from adoption as well for a lot of companies, and especially for government clients with the set of regulations which are there, security score to it. So at Microsoft, we don't say just AI-led transformation, or we say secure AI-led transformation, because I think governance aspect of it, data aspect of it is equally crucial. I think one of the key things here is you choose the right partner for this journey. So when at Microsoft, we think of AI, we think something as powerful as AI needs to have the responsible component along with it as well, which is we are being respectful to the guidelines which government has in different geographies, as well as also being mindful of what kind of data is being fed to AI. So I'll give you an example. Microsoft Copilot, which is currently being used by more than 10 million users, we don't use any of the customer data to train our models. So your data belongs to you, and we respect that. At the same time, we also provide you capability with Azure AI, where you can build your own models. And we have partners like Infor as well as IBM, which play a crucial role in that. And again, when you think of AI and secure AI, it all starts with data. So really, we have Chris from Splunk also here talk about that. It's really not just throwing bodies at problems. It's really being thoughtful about what you want to achieve, what are the potential implications of that, and taking care of governance also. So we have clients across government, we have clients across individual solopreneurs, as well as mid-market and enterprise clients. But it all starts by first looking at what is the data we can use, and then thinking of the strategy. I think the other aspect we have to think of security is, in this era, we say that anything which is digital is at risk. So really putting systems and processes in place before you think of AI, that's also equally crucial, just like it's crucial to think of preparing your data as well as adoption and change management with respect to AI.
Chris, how do we complement with Splunk?
I think the question here is there's a lot of third-party AI tooling that now exists, lots of cloud service providers. The questions around IT and automation for this and what a vendor would think of, what a vendor evaluation would look like, is really around, there's the traditional IT vendor approval questions that you would normally go through, but in this case, the really important parts are, number one, the business piece, reevaluating what your business can do once you've adopted this tooling. And then the second piece around this is also questions, a lot of legal questions that I don't think we have answers to, and it's around intellectual property, who owns your data. And with that in mind, Splunk is actually, I answer this on a daily basis, and the answer is your data is your own. Just because a new technology has come out, Splunk has always been in the case where customers own their own data, and that hasn't changed with the introduction of LLMs. So as we've introduced our Splunk AI assistant, that was all trained on internal Splunk data that we already had to actually provide queries and automation for cybersecurity and IT automation use cases.
Very good. I will begin the third chapter of this, and it's all about integrating AI into your business. So I'll continue with Chris. Chris, someone approaches Chris at Splunk and say, Chris, I heard about AI. How do I do this? What's my first step? What's my path with Splunk? What would you tell them?
I think the first question I always have is, number one, why? And number two, who's doing this? Splunk has a variety of tooling that incorporates AI. And with that, there's really point solutions built by our threat research team for cybersecurity use cases that we think generalize very well to customers that we publish on and actually roll out as new point solutions as part of enterprise security. So our customers aren't building that themselves, which allows threat analysts to deal with more and expand their breadth across the organization and reduce your threat surface as the first piece. And the second piece, we really have citizen data science tooling as well, providing guided workflows to allow business users to build insights on their own Splunk data. And then finally, we also cater to data science teams as well. So we have tooling that data scientists like to use if they don't want to learn Splunk SPL, they can instead use Python to build their own queries and actually build their own LLMs in their own containerized environment that we provide to them.
Okay. Sandeep, at Infor, customer approaches you or your team. How do you determine if they have the sweet spot for this?
It's always, again, a personal question, right? And so one of the things that so we get this a lot, which is, I really want to use AI. Tell me what to do with it. And that's always the wrong question to ask. But honestly, that's one of the questions. And there's also the question of, well, tell me about Gen AI and how I can use it. And so we try to navigate customers' education to be pragmatic and valuable. So we always start with, as Chris said, the why do you want it, right? Are you looking at, in manufacturing, are you trying to reduce scrap? Are you looking at basically improving, kind of your manufacturing process and providing better predictive, prescriptive capabilities? Are you looking at planning labor or supply chains, which are a challenge? What is the reason that will get you excited if you used AI, right? Is it more money, less cost, more efficiency, right? Start there. And then we say, well, and even if you could do it, you may not have the right data, right? And so we actually have a platform, which we call a composable business platform, which allows you to not only have kind of the citizen data scientist, but also look at setting up the right governance structures and being able to have one version of the truth, but also different security layers so that you're accessing whatever is the right privilege. And we can say that you now have a platform that allows you to monetize your data, right? You could decide to share it. You can decide to consume it for supply chain or threat analysis or predictive capabilities in manufacturing. And then the part of the composable architecture is, how do you connect it to different systems, right? Because the reality is you're going to have multiple clouds. You're going to have multiple business applications. So how quickly can you all use the same information without making copies, right? And so we talk about that at a holistic level, and then also from a technology level, to say, are you integrated to use one version of the truth in one location and give the answer that you want? And if you're able to do that quickly, then I think it's worth it. If you're doing it for a business, then it's worth it. If you're doing it for the case of technology, that's great. We want to be your partner, but think again and see if that's really what you want.
Yeah. Michael, at IBM, somebody approaches you, hey, I want to do AI. What do you tell them? How do we begin?
Yeah, I think something that really resonated with what was already said, and I'll just piggyback off that, but I think Chris mentioned asking why you want to do this. So I'm coming back to having a real use case with real impact on your business. So we're not saying we're not saying no to anyone, but we're just trying to understand where it comes from and how we can help them progress this a bit further, because sometimes customer arrive with a vision that is not necessarily complete. They see the first step, but they don't see like the day 2 operations and how it can evolve in time. So what we're doing usually is what we call design thinking sessions. So that's something we offer. We sit down with the customer, we try to understand the persona, we try to understand in which part of the business did they want to integrate it, the use case, and we kind of start from there and develop it further with them. And sometimes even we just switch completely the scope. So the scope, you started with a different scope, and now we've kind of scoped something else that might have more impact for them. So I think the answer is just get started, get interested, because definitely it will give a competitive advantage to a company that can really put this technology in the right place, but then also get some help from experts that have experience with that, have experienced it with different customers, and they'll be able to help you with different like, you know, spotting different inheritance, different developing your business strategy further, and all this process, like I was saying, is iterative, flexible, and the goal is really to develop the vision from maybe a smaller one to really starting to think ahead day 2 and how we can really gain that competitive advantage that I was talking about.
Because obviously for each of you, an AI roadmap is not about going big at once. I mean, you know, it's always try often to fail as quick as possible to learn something and redo it, right? That should be the approach to AI. It's not a big chunk where you need to reshuffle your entire company to try the stuff. Let's begin with Shubham for the last chapter, how we stay competitive with AI. Give me success stories.
Oh,
something that people would not figure, hey, I can do this via Microsoft, and AI never thought of this.
Oh, Pierre, can go on and on that one. So whether you think of customer service or operational efficiency or really rethinking your product offerings, there are just many stories around AI where we have seen companies being able to significantly enhance the impact of their work using AI. I'll start by my day. So on a day, I receive close to between 500 to 600 emails. That's the average. And imagine waking up with 200 unread emails every day, how that would feel with respect to productivity. So number one, I would say, is increasing the productivity of your own employees. That is empowering them to do more. That's where AI plays significant role. And we have seen that with Microsoft Copilot playing a massive role. As a matter of fact, here for this session, I used Microsoft Copilot. So for this session, essentially to distill the Q&A session as well as overall brief of this, I was able to translate that 3,000 word document, which you beautifully had put together, in less than 300 words to kind of have a summary of this session. So number one, it's about empowering your employees to help serve your customers better. So that's number one, I would say. The second area I would say, which is a slightly low risk AI implementation. And I completely agree with what Chris said earlier, which is 90 to 95% of AI projects fail. So how do you pick those specific scenarios which have high impact and start small and win and then get executive buy-in? I think that area is customer service. That's whether it's a government or an enterprise client or a small, medium scale customer, all of them exist by serving their customers. So how can you make it easy for them to essentially engage with you and provide that first point of entry after the sale, which is customer service, and make it smooth? I think that's an area where AI has kind of proven its value consistently. So whether you have internal workflow data or any external data, AI can really help with that massively. And I think the third piece I would say is with respect to rethinking your product offerings. That's another space where we have seen companies being able to really transform how they offer certain product. And by infusing intelligence, how it makes it easier for them. So I travel typically 150 days in a year. And I see that we use an internal application called as Amadeus for our travel. And Amadeus knows my patterns. It knows which kind of hotels I stay, what's my typical travel time, and it usually recommends me that. So a company which was just involved in providing travel offerings now has become my AI-enabled travel assistant. That's the value which customers can think of to stay competitive, which is enhancing product offerings. So in summary, I would say empower your employees. Number two, make sure you pick up those use cases which can really transform and help your business processes like customer service. And finally, also rethink your offerings, which is, can you really transform using AI and infuse intelligence into them so that now you're more competitive with respect to end customer as well as the ecosystem.
Chris, if we continued on customer service, because again, my experience with Splunk many years ago was all improving customer service via logs analysis and so forth. Any success story? It could be customer service or something else that people say, wow, I need to do this with Splunk.
Yeah, so with Splunk, there's certainly customer service use cases. We process call logs, improve IT automation as well. So internally, even if we're talking about customer service, IT is often the provider to the business. And with that, the question becomes, how does IT budgets have really only shrunk over the last 20 years in North America. Constantly, IT departments are being asked to do more with less. And they're also not able to fill roles in which they've had senior resources that have been in that job for 20, 25 years. They're retiring and not backfilling them.
Yeah.
And so the successes we've seen with Splunk applied at some of our customers, a good example is really Cybersecurity, which is a customer to the business. And with that, customers have constantly been in this world of living through alert noise, alert fatigue, and SOCs that are simply stretched too thin to properly manage security across an entire business. And with that in mind, there's a lot of automation work to be done initially to get to a point where you can adopt AI. And with that, we've seen customers that have been able to adopt strong automation practices and run very lean, small SOCs, are often in a much better position to adopt AI afterwards. And so in terms of actual better performance of a SOC as customer service to a business, we've seen that they've been able to reduce mean time to resolution across any cybersecurity incidents from hours down to minutes. And so by having a good foundation with data and automation first, and then layering in artificially intelligent capabilities on top of that, it really only makes your SOC more efficient, and you can continue to do more with less with the number of analysts that you've typically had that's probably decreased by 50 to 80% over the last 20 years. So that's one thing we've also seen. And on the other side, a lot of machine data that we've been able to process as well. One really exciting customer that I've been able to work with is BMW. And so they've actually, with partnership between Splunk and NVIDIA, they're analyzing 200,000 sensors in real time, and they're able to predict when they're going to have production upsets in building a new BMW car 30 minutes to 3 hours beforehand, and they're able to pull it off the line and allow their factories to run more smoothly because of that. So that improves customer service downstream as well, right? Because you're not seeing customers with a huge number of defects having to bring their cars into the dealership afterwards to remediate. And so really, in a collaborative business world, we're all customers to another group. The CEO is probably the customer to your top salesperson, and IT orgs are our businesses are customers to IT orgs as well.
Thank you, Chris. Michael, success stories with IBM. Well, I mean, there's a lot of success stories with IBM. Let's be specifics within AI.
Yes, I think it's from what was mentioned, I think it's also important to consider that one thing that might be beneficial for one company might not be for another. So it's important to focus on yourself, your progress, because not everyone is at the same step on the, I would say, AI ladder, if I can say. There's different steps to adopting AI. So you really have to know in terms of company where you're at in your journey to AI, and you have to really start from there and not necessarily look outward to see what are others doing, which is a good thing, but not necessarily base your strategy off of that, because somebody might doing something that's really not, shouldn't be the focus for you. So I just wanted to start off with that, because at IBM, we do have many customer success stories, but they're all different from one another. So if we're like one thing that made the news, but IBM has been working with NASA to develop some proprietary large language model to help them with even with prediction of risk of fire and whatnot. There's been also some other partnership and other customer stories, like more in the entertainment business. So at the Grammys, I don't know if anyone has watched the Grammys, but there was IBM Watson X, which was giving out descriptions of artists that were there. So just making it easier for the social media team that was hosting the Grammys. So offloading some part of their work to AI. So again, AI is not meant necessarily to replace anyone, but more to boost productivity, so the media team could focus on other tasks that were more value added. Same thing with Wimbledon. If anyone's fans of tennis, IBM has partnered with the Wimbledon championship to automate the commentary sections. So it was commenting the game based on visual recognition of the game, and then mixed with some LLM. So that's where as a SME in automation and also in AI, like combination of technology as well can be very interesting, that topic. So often we think AI, but I think the vision has to be broader in terms of AI and other technologies. What do I have that I can integrate with to propose value without reinventing the wheel either? So we do have a lot, but I think it's really important to focus on what can help a certain enterprise versus what can help me might be different.
Sure. Sandeep, I'm going to turn this to you. Happy you're there, because I do have very specific use cases. Some of the work I do with my colleagues is to troubleshoot why an ERP implementation has gone wrong. And it has nothing to do with the technology or the vendor. Nothing, okay? It's quite often the fact that people don't know how to reinvent their processes, either to fit the ERP or the ERP to help them reinvent. Okay? So considering AI, and you got experience in this, how can we use AI to better use what's in the box, should I say, when you do ERP stuff?
It's a good question, and we were actually interesting enough thinking of it from the perspective of how can you use AI to get your ERP set up the way your business is supposed to be, right? And so ultimately, when we think of a business, a business ultimately is driven by the largest, your largest capital expense as the people, right? And so how are you getting your organization's investment in the people to drive towards wherever you want to go next, right? And when you use ERP software, you're using it to kind of optimize business processes, right? So we, of course, we have the concept of process mining, which is looking at how all the different business processes are set up in your organization and what are standard and what are non-standard. And then as you're using these processes, understanding from an AI perspective, what should be changed to optimize the number of clicks, optimize the amount of time it takes to process a business function. And you could leverage that from an AI perspective to optimize your business process, right? But where we are seeing the benefit is coming to you and saying, well, this is how you are operating your manufacturing um, we had a customer that's looking at making cheese from milk, right? And how are you looking at your information to do better cheese, right? So not only looking at from a business perspective, but from a business value perspective, and how does the ERP build towards better cheese, right? Which has nothing to do with ERP beyond the fact that you use ERP to make the cheese, right?
Absolutely.
We look at both of those things, which is optimize it for your special business, but also optimize it for why you're using the ERPs to start with.
Yeah, very good answers. Because I've seen cases where people look at the old ways of doing stuff and they want to stick in there for their comfort level, fear of change, so forth, right? And we say, guys, don't look at the world the same way you did before, because this is not why you're going a new way. It's to eliminate low value tasks that are boring, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be repeating yourself. And plus, I'm sure amongst all of you, you see customers that have a shortage of skill sets, kind of tough to hire people, right? Want to eliminate low value tasks. And at the end of the day, without saying so, I guess we're all raising the level of play in the playing field, right? We're just raising competencies via AI. Guys, we have a few minutes left. I will ask you closing arguments from each of you. Why AI with, let's begin with Michael now. Your first throw at this at IBM. Closing arguments.
Yeah, sure. I think we spoke of AI really in general, but I haven't spoke about the platform of IBM so much during that webinar. So I'll just take the opportunity to kind of present it at the same time as to why. So the platform is Watson X. So it's built on 3 pillars. There's watsonx.ai, watsonx.data, watsonx.governance. So even without explaining, I think you can see how it all comes together. So the AI is kind of an AI studio for data scientists, but also I was saying ease of use. So even some business user can use it. So there's like a UI, there's also some notebooks that you can use. So there's really both aspect, and it includes the generative AI portion as well as the machine learning portion, more traditional aspect of AI. So that's one of the that's one of the things I would say. Generative AI is not there to replace traditional AI. It's just there to complement it, to push it forward. So that's one thing. The data aspect is really to make sure that there's something that we said at IBM, there's no AI without IA. So IA standing for information architecture. So you do have to have your data in order to make good AI. So that's also the second pillar. And there's also the governance aspect, which we've touched upon during this webinar. But it's also important to make sure that while doing AI, we're staying compliant with the different regulations. We're staying away from the risks, so operational risk as well as other types of risks. And we also have to make sure that we can govern the life cycle of the model. So more on, like I was saying, more operational base, other than just risk, but making sure that we can govern all of this, the life cycle, the development, the drift, the bias. So we do have the complete platform for a complete AI life cycle. So that I would say is why you would do AI with IBM. We have a trusted platform, which is there with also targeted use case and making sure that your data is really up for the tasks. So
thank you, Michael. Chris, closing arguments. 1 minute, please.
I'll be quick. I did want to make one quick point in the fact that this isn't new. The tool, we might have a shiny new tool, but the concepts aren't new. Data's been a strategic asset for 40 years, ever since credit card companies started experimenting with who they could lend more money to and lose it in the effort to improve their ability to model delinquency rates. This is no different than that. You have to see your data as a strategic asset in this case and make those same investments. And you might lose some money, but the payoff is very high in the end. And briefly, you'll be using Splunk's AI capabilities because we already provide you one lens of your IT data that you then reuse for security, and then you then reuse for business operations. So there's a single source of truth there. And with that, you can ingest it once, use it many times, and We have thousands of integrations, and operationalizing those AI insights, once you've experimented with it, you've already operationalized it. So we've made that very effortless for end users, and we already have the tooling in place to support a lot of that.
Thank you, Chris. One topic we did not discuss today, and we won't have time for this. No AI without data. The more data, the better AI. I mean, people don't understand this, but it is what it is. Shubham, 1 minute, please.
Yeah.
Microsoft.
Yeah, thanks, Pierre. I think at Microsoft, as our mission state, it's all about just empowering people to achieve more. So as Sandeep also said, people, process, and technology, it's really around those three pillars, which is empowering your people, really innovating your processes, which is meaningful innovation. And finally, with respect to technology, making sure we are doing this in a responsible AI way. So that's our approach, whether it's our empowering your employee, we have Microsoft Copilot, which is our productivity solution. With respect to processes, we have Azure AI, as well as GitHub Copilot, as well as the OpenAI integration. So you can think of really rethink your processes to be more impactful. And finally, we do this all in a responsible AI way. The point we discussed about data security, as well as making sure something which is as powerful as AI is also used responsibly. So that's my argument from Microsoft's side.
Thank you, Shubham. Sandeep, closing argument for all of us at Infor.
Yeah, and so Infor thing brands itself as the industry cloud company. What that really means is that we want to be very specific and personal in how we approach providing that benefit of AI, right? Which is improve productivity, improve revenue cost, being able to empower a workforce to be able to leverage your business systems and being able to make that happen in a way that causes the company to be moving forward. I think you mentioned about the try, repeat, learn, right? So I talk about failing forward, right? Although that sounds terrible, it isn't that bad because you ultimately have to experiment to innovate forward, right? And so being able to do that with AI from a pragmatic perspective is really why we want to think of ourselves as the partner, because it's not about the AI as much as being able to drive those business benefits and being equipped to do that with a platform, the governance, the security, as well as the quick interactions into different systems.
Thank you very much, Sandeep. Chris, Michael, Shubham, Sandeep, thank you very much for these, 50 minutes we spent together today. That was an immense pleasure. I hope we'll do this again with other topics, because I do have a bunch of ideas listening to you guys, just a bunch. So Victoria, over to you.
Thank you, Pierre. Well, this ends our webinar. Unfortunately, we didn't have the time to cover the Q&A session. Don't worry, we will send an email with the replay as well as the questions, the answers to your questions. I want to thank you, Pierre, as well as the panelists and everyone attending this webinar for taking part in it. We hope you found it informative, that you have a better view of this new technology that we have. If you're interested to know more about the IT trends that will mark this year of 2024, I invite you to download IT Trends. I have the link that is in the chat. You can also go to our website to download it. If you have any more questions about integrating AI into your business and the impact it could have on the competitiveness of your business, feel free to send us a message at NOVIPRO. We have a team of consultants ready to help you. They have a double expertise with advanced tech expertise as well as strategic business vision, so we can help boost your enterprise and its productivity. We offer different services, not only in AI, but we have IT master plan, ERP selection, etc. So feel free to join us and to send us a message. And thank you again for taking part into this webinar. We hope to see you very soon.